South Asia. Paleolithic tools have been discovered in India dating to 200,000 years ago, and Neolithic sites are known from near the Industry Valley dating to around 800 BC. Agriculture began in the Indus Valley around 700 BC and reached the Ganges Valley. By 3000 BC, barley, cotton, and wheat were grown and the population had domesticated cattle, goats, and sheep. The Indus Valley civilization developed around 3000 BC in the Indus and Ghaggar-Hakra river valleys of eastern Afghanistan, Pakistan, and western India. Another name for this civilization is Harappan, after the first of its cities to be excavated, Harappa in the Pakistani province of Punjab. Harappan civilization grew out of the earlier agricultural communities as they evolved into cities. These communities created and traded jewelry, figurines, and seals that appear widely scattered throughout Mesopotamia, Afghanistan, and Iran. Chickens were domesticated in addition to the earlier crops and animals. They developed their own writing system, the Indus Valley script, which is still mostly undeciphered. The exact structure of society and the way the cities were governed is not known. By about 1600 BC, the Indus Valley culture had abandoned many of their cities, including Mohenjo-Daro. The exact reason for this decline is not known. Indo-European speaking peoples began to spread into India about 1500 BC. The Rig Veda, in Sanskrit, dates to this period and begins a period often known as the Vedic period. Between 1500 and 500 BC, these peoples spread throughout most of India and had begun to found small cities. Vedic society was characterized by the Varna system, which divided society into 4 broad castes, which were later elaborated. By the end of the Vedic period, this way of organizing society had become central to Indian society. Religion in the late Vedic period was evolving into Hinduism, which spread throughout Southeast Asia. Siddhartha Gautama, born around 560 BC in northern India, went on to found a new religion based on his ascetic life, Buddhism. This faith also spread throughout eastern and southeastern Asia. After his death, this period also saw the composition of the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata. The kingdom of Magadha rose to prominence under a number of dynasties that peaked in power under the reign of Ashoka Maurya, one of India's most legendary and famous emperors. During the reign of Ashoka, the 4 dynasties of Chola, Chera, and Pandya were ruling in the south, while Devanampiya, Tissa, 250 to 210 BC, controlled Anuradhapura, now Sri Lanka. These kingdoms, while not part of Ashoka's empire, were in friendly terms with the Maurya Empire. An alliance existed between Devanampiya Tissa and Ashoka of India, who sent Buddhist missionaries to Sri Lanka. Most of North India was reunited under the Gupta Empire beginning under Chandragupta I around AD 320. Under his successors, the empire spread to include much of India, except for the Deccan Plateau and the very south of the peninsula. This was a period of relative peace, and the Gupta rulers generally left administration in local rulers. The Gupta Empire was weakened and ultimately ruined by the raids of Hunas, a branch of the Hephthalites emanating from Central Asia, and the empire broke up into smaller regional kingdoms by the end of the 5th century AD. India would remain fragmented into smaller states until the rise of the Mughal Empire in the 1500s. Americas. In pre-Columbian times, several large, centralized ancient civilizations developed in the Western Hemisphere, both in Mesoamerica and Western South America. Beyond these areas, the use of agriculture expanded east of the Andes Mountains in South America, particularly with the Marajora culture, and in the continental United States. Andean civilizations. Ancient Andean civilization began with the rise of organized fishing communities from 3500 BC onwards. Along with a sophisticated maritime society came the construction of large monuments, which likely existed as community centers. The peoples of this area grew beans, cotton, peanuts, and sweet potatoes, fished in the ocean, and by about 2000 BC had added the potato to their crops. The Chavan culture, based around the Chavan cult, emerged around 1000 BC and led to large temples and artworks as well as sophisticated textiles. Gold, silver, and copper were worked for jewelry and occasionally for small copper tools. After the decline of Chavan culture, a number of cities formed after about 200 BC. The cities at Wari, Pukara, and Tiahuanaco were all likely over 10,000 residents, From about AD 300, the Machaka culture arose. Along the Mosh River, these people left painted pottery depicting their society and culture with a wide range of varied subjects. Besides the Machaka, there were a number of other large states in the Andes after about AD 100. Included amongst these are the Nazca culture, who were mainly village-dwelling but left behind a large ceremonial center at Cahuachi, as well as the Nazca lines, a large number of huge designs set into the desert floor. Mesoamerica. Agricultural cultivation began around 800 BC. In Mesoamerica, where avocados, beans, chili, peppers, gourds, and squashes were grown. From about 700 BC. Around 400 BC maize began to be grown, and soon after this, tomatoes. Settlements appeared around 300 BC, and by 2000 BC most of Mesoamerica was practicing agriculture. Although some animals were domesticated, notably turkeys and dogs, the lack of suitable large animals precluded the development of animals used for transportation or labor. Around 1200 BC the first Olmec center of San Lorenzo was founded, which remained the center of Olmec civilization until around 800 BC, when La Venta took over before losing primacy to Tres Zapotes around 400 BC. These and other Olmec centers were groups of tombs, temples, and other ceremonial sites, built of stone. Their construction testifies to the complexity of Olmec society, although the exact nature of how they were governed is not known. They also erected large stone sculptures of human heads and other subjects. Jade jewelry and other Olmec objects are found throughout Mesoamerica, likely having traveled via trade networks. The Olmec writing system was mainly used for recording their calendar, both of which influenced later Mesoamerican cultures. After the decline of the Olmecs, other civilizations in Mesoamerica either arose or emerged from the Olmec shadow: the Mayans, the Zapotecs, and Teotihuacan. The Zapotecs began around 500 BC in the Oaxaca Valley at the site of Monte Alban. Monte Alban grew to around 25,000 residents in the period around AD 200, with the city having large stone temples and an expansive stone plaza. Like the Olmecs, they had a writing system and calendar. But by AD 900, Monte Alban was deserted for unknown reasons. Teotihuacan developed around AD 200 and centered on the city of Teotihuacan, which grew to perhaps as many as 200,000 inhabitants at its height. Teotihuacan lasted until around AD 700, when it was burned and vandalized. Maya culture began to emerge around AD 300 in the Yucatan Peninsula and modern-day Guatemala. During the 600 years of the Classical Maya period, more than 80 Mayan sites were built, with temples, pyramids, and palaces the focal point of each center. The most influential was Tikal, but Mayan civilization was based on city-states, which often were at war with each other. This seems not to have restricted trade, which went on between the cities. A priestly elite kept astronomical and calendrical knowledge, recording it with a writing system based on the Olmec system of glyphs. History, poetry, and other records were recorded in books, most of which did not survive the Spanish conquest of Mesoamerica. Mathematics was also studied, and they used the concept of zero in their calculations. The Mayan civilization began to decline about AD 800, and most of its cities were deserted soon afterwards. Northern America. Organized societies, in the ancient United States or Canada, were often mound builder civilizations. One of the most significant of these was the Poverty Point culture that existed in the U.S. state of Louisiana, and was responsible for the creation of over 100 mound sites. The Mississippi River was a core area in the development of long-distance trade and culture. Following Poverty Point, successive complex cultures such as the Hopewell emerged in the southeastern United States in the early Woodland period. Before AD 500, many mound builder societies retained a hunter-gatherer form of subsistence.